In this video, I'm going to be guiding you through Chapter 3.2, Households. Here we'll be covering the influences on household spending, saving, and borrowing. The amount of spending that will be done within the economy depends on the income and wealth of its citizens. If they have high levels of disposable income, they'll be spending more on goods and services within the economy. Consumers with assets such as properties and stocks will be able to borrow against their assets, as they can put their assets as collateral to unlock additional liquidity or cash. And because they have high disposable income, they'll be buying goods for the status, such as Rolexes and Hermes bags, etc., etc. The next influence depends on the rate of interest, as interest rates determine the cost of money. So when interest rates are high, savings are usually high and spending will be less. But when interest rates are low, this encourages more spending and less saving. Consumer confidence is very important, as when the consumers feel optimistic, they tend to spend more. If their future careers and job opportunities are stable and secure, they will feel more optimistic and spend more money. And if consumers feel confident in the future of the economy, such as growth and boom, this will usually elevate consumer confidence. The next factor is age, as a young person will have less disposable income to spend within the economy, as they have no experience within the workforce. An older person will also have less disposable income. This is due to retirement. Next, we have culture, as different cultures will have different spending patterns, such as the Chinese value education, such as tuition services. In the US, they value healthcare and beauty, and the Japanese value spending on housing. The distribution of income also influences spending, as this is the difference between the high and low income earners in the economy. The high income earners will spend more, as this is a lower proportion of their income. However, low income earners will spend less, but they are still spending a higher proportion of their income on goods and services. So by government intervention, with a wealth transfer from the rich to the poor, this will result in additional spending from both categories. The next influence is the advancements in technology, such as a new TV, a smartphone, cameras, and an integration of AI in all products these days. Moving on to savings. For wealthier people, their disposable incomes will rise and the level of savings will generally increase. And for them, it is easier to save, and savings will not occur if your income is below your non-discretionary spending. Non-discretionary spending is the essential expenses that are necessary for basic living and cannot be easily reduced or avoided. Some examples include rent, utilities, groceries, insurance premiums, and loan payments. Our next influence of savings is the rate of interest. High levels of interest will encourage people to save due to a higher rate of return, therefore less spending. Confidence is yet important within the economy. If confidence in the economy is low, consumers will result in saving. If confidence in their job security is low, people will generally save more, as they need to cover future expenses. The next influence on saving is age, as a young person will have low income, meaning low savings. An older person will have higher income, therefore allowing them to save more as they have additional disposable income. For small families, they have very high expenses, which does not allow them to save as much. And people that are retired will have a low income, but their expenses will be lower and their savings should be higher. And for cultural attitudes, some cultures just prefer to spend their money as soon as they earn it, and some cultures prefer to save a large proportion of their earnings. The next factor is the tax treatment of savings, as low tax on savings will encourage people to save more. Some countries even have a tax-free schemes on savings, such as Singapore. And the last factor that influences savings is the range and quality of financial institutions that are available to the consumers. If there is a greater range and variety of savings opportunities, the likelihood of people willing to save will be significantly higher. The consumer in this case will have confidence in the ability of the large institutions to pay them back the interest. And finally, borrowing. Low-income households will have a greater need to borrow money. These are for necessities, but the problem is that they cannot borrow much. Higher-income households will have the ability to borrow more for large purchases, such as buying a house. The next factor is the availability of loans and overdrafts, as banks make it easy to overdraw on people's accounts, as low-income households may use this out of necessity, and overdrafts charge very high interest rates. But high-income individuals will be able to access very large loans, which they can pay off over a longer period of time. They usually do this to buy additional assets or properties. The next factor is the rate of interest. The rate of interest determines the cost of borrowing. At low rates, this means high levels of borrowing, as financing debt is significantly cheaper, and high-income households have the ability to borrow large amounts of money compared to low-income households. Our next factor is confidence. When people are very confident in the economy, they believe that they are able to earn a higher salary in the future, which means that they can finance or borrow some of the extra expenses for today, and then they can repay back the loan sometime in the future, which results in higher levels of spending overall. The next factor is age, as people in their 20s to 30s can borrow significantly more money, as banks know that they have 30 to 40 additional working years that they can pay back their loans, and borrowing is necessary depending on your age, as events such as university, weddings, and family expenses all take place within your 20s and 30s, and banks know that you have many years ahead of you to pay back the loan that they've given you today. And lastly, cultural attitudes to borrowing are different, as some cultures are less risk-averse to borrow large sums of money. However, there are other cultures that it is acceptable to be highly leveraged. Leverage means how much money you have borrowed against your income. If your annual income is $100,000 and you take out a loan of $400,000, this means that you are 4 times leverage against your annual salary. This is not on the specification, so you don't need to know this. I hope that helped. I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.